Welcome back to the Cannibal Mindset, and I am virtual. I don't know where you are located. I know you're not located right now in this country. That's what I was told.
I go back and forth between New York City and Singapore. So I'm in Singapore at the moment.
You're in Singapore right now. All right, fantastic. So I was in with Nir Eyal, amazing author. Would you consider yourself an author first, a researcher? Like, the book has so much good content and research in it. I was trying to figure out which came first. What is your background?
I would say I'm a father and a husband and a friend first, and that's the biggest job in my life right now. It has always been is trying to raise my little girl and be there for my wife, and that's the most important part of what I do every day. And then taking care of my physical and mental health is important. And then last, I think, in my life comes the work I do, which is very, very important to me. But I'm what you call a behavioral designer. So typically, I help companies design products and services that help people build healthy habits. So I've worked with companies in healthcare, enterprise, you name it, education companies all over the world to build good habits in people's lives. That was the subject of my first book, Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products, as well as the class that I taught at Stanford. I taught at the Graduate School of Business and then later at the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design for many years. And about 5 years ago, I started getting interested in the other side of the story, which is, what happens when products are designed to be so engaging, so habit-forming, that sometimes we go overboard and sometimes we get distracted by them. And so that's when I embarked on this research to figure out how we can overcome distraction to live the kind of life we really want. And this was very much a personal journey, right? Even though I did look at the academic side for many, many years, I just as a personal note, I hate reading self-help books that are full of personal anecdotes that don't back up their claims with science. And it's very important to me. Every single one of my books, there's always peer-reviewed studies. There's 30 pages of citations in Indistractable because I really want it to be science-based. Yeah. And it has to work. Right? So sometimes you get the other end of the spectrum where it's all highly controlled lab studies, but it's not practical. It doesn't actually work in our real life. And so I'm proud to say that after 5 years of research, becoming Indistractable has changed every facet of my life, right? There's no area of my life, my physical health, my mental health, I'm more productive at work. I'm in the best shape of my life at 43 years old. I have a better relationship with my family and friends than ever before. All because I have the power to do what I say I'm going to do, which I didn't have before. I was highly distracted before, and now I finally have that power.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to get to I think the trigger of the book came from an incident with your daughter, but let me go back. So, you wrote a book, Hooked, which great book, but a lot of people could have and did read that book and say, but wait a minute. Aren't you creating the problem that social media or technology is having on us? Isn't that literally what the problem is when people pick up Hooked and they're like, oh, well, wait a minute, this guy got us addicted to social media. Now he's telling us to be not distracted by it. That's not the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's given me a lot of credit to say that I created this stuff. I've had no relationship with these companies that have built these type of products. My book came out in 2014. Facebook started in 2006. Google was 2006, 2007. So I wish I could say that I was there during the founding days of these companies, but I wasn't. My goal was to steal their secrets. Right. My goal was, how come we all can't build products and services that are as sticky and as habit forming as Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Slack, Snapchat? Why is it just the gaming companies who have known these techniques, by the way, for decades, right? The gaming companies, the social media companies, they've known them for a very, very long time, way before I came around. My idea was, why can't the rest of us use these techniques? And frankly, the problem is not that a few companies have figured out how to build products that suck us in. The real problem when it comes to most businesses is that most products don't suck us in, they just suck. Right? We need to use these techniques more, not less. Yeah, right. We need more people to be hooked onto Education, right? Like I worked with a company that I invested in, Kahoot, when they were just babies, right? They were brand new. They hadn't even made any product. The founder called me up. I do these office hours every week. The founder, Johan, called me up and said, I want to use your hook model to get kids hooked onto education. Awesome. I invested in his company. Today, the company is worth over $3 billion. It's publicly traded. I've worked with companies like Fitbod to get people hooked to exercise. I've worked with companies. Actually, I recently invested in a company called Cutback Coach that helps people reduce their consumption of alcohol. Guess what? By getting them hooked to this app so they can be mindful about how much alcohol they consume. So we absolutely can have our cake and eat it too. We can get the best out of technology by learning how to build good habits with technology, and we can break the bad habits by understanding the deeper psychology of what's going on. So,
that's not the story. That's not the story people tell. The idea, and I'm 100% with you, and that's why I asked you this question, because when you're surrounded by a society that says technology is bad, when you have documentaries like The Social Dilemma saying it's the end of the world, everybody's railing against something that actually could be and is. There's always for every positive, there's always a negative, right? There's always some other side of it. But it's, people are finding what they're looking for, what they're being told to look for, as opposed to the other side of it.
Right. That's absolutely right. And, most people have a very strong, what's called negativity bias, right? This is a known human heuristic, our bias towards, new, scary. And this has happened since time immemorial. Every technology people freak out about and only look at the downside and don't think about the good side. And it's incredible how blind we are. I mean, think about this pandemic. Technology has saved our butts during this pandemic. Look, we're talking right now over video phone, thousands of miles away, with this technology that if you had shown us when we were kids would be complete science fiction. Oh yeah, for free.
Right, that's exactly right.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
And we only look at the bad side. And I'm not saying there aren't downsides. There definitely aren't downsides. But we need to stop moralizing and medicalizing. It drives me crazy. We're all addicted to technology. No, you're not. You're not addicted to technology. An addiction is a pathology. You wouldn't say, you have epilepsy this way, or that you have Tourette's this way. Those are both urges and compulsions. But, somehow addiction, we can plop onto anything that we like to do in excess, and suddenly we medicalize it. It's complete rubbish. Don't listen to that crap, because it's incredibly disempowering. When you tell someone they're addicted, and we start thinking, oh my gosh, our kids are addicted to video games, there's nothing we can do about it. Guess what people do? Nothing.
Right. They just say, listen, it is what it is. And that's I was just talking to a big client of mine, and they were going on this path about these new, some assessment they took online for all their employees. And I said, listen, that's great, but this owner's belief is that, well, once you're labeled this, that's it. You can't, then people, okay, well, it's not my fault that it's not me. It's not me. Yeah. It's the way I'm wired. It's the way I'm wired. So it relieves all types of responsibility.
That's right. And we love that stuff, right? Like when you look at these personality tests, 99% of them are completely bogus, unscientific rubbish, right? There's only one scientifically validated personality test, and that's the Big Five. But all the other ones, they're silly. And in fact, I would say they're harmful, because it's exactly like you said. When people believe that they are a certain type, right? When they label themselves, I have an addictive personality. I have a short attention span. There's something broken about me. It's my personality type. You perform in accordance to your expectations. We hear today that technology is hijacking our brains. It, ironically enough, is exactly what the tech companies want.
Yeah.
What we all want, our shared values here, are that we all want to make good choices for ourselves that are aligned with our goals in life. But when you believe that you and your family members are all addicted to technology and it's hijacking our brain, you will act as if that is true, whether it is or not.
Right. That becomes your truth.
Yeah, exactly. You're not addicted. You're simply distracted, right? And there's a big, big difference.
And what? So, which is this is, and I want to get into that in a minute. The idea of you're not addicted, you're distracted, but the idea is if you are saying to yourself, hey, listen, I have this addictive personality, there's nothing I can do about it, your brain is going to conspire to make that even more true, right? Like
That's exactly right.
Like your brain is hardwired to find what you focus on. So you're like, oh, well, I'm addicted. Oh, so it's out of my control. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it makes you the victim in your own life, which is exactly what people want, what companies want you to happen, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's we see this not only with technology, we see this with even drugs, with substances. We know that for alcoholics, the number one determinant of whether someone recovering after treatment for alcoholism, the number one determinant of whether they will stay sober is not their level of physical dependency. Okay, it's not their level of physical dependency. It's their belief in their own power to change. That's number one, not the drugs or the alcohol that are in their body, but the beliefs that are in their brain. And so we need to be very, very careful about these beliefs that we have for ourselves, because this is across the board when we label ourselves. Now, we can also use labels for good, by the way. Part of what I talk about in the book is about reimagining your temperament, making sure you don't have these limiting beliefs, but it's also about adopting new monikers that empower you. So let me give you a quick example. So one of the most widely held pieces of folk psychology that has turned out to not be true is this idea of ego depletion. Now, ego depletion is this idea that willpower is a limited resource. And this got a lot of credibility over the years when there was one particular researcher who actually did studies and found that willpower seemed to decrease like a resource, like gas,
a battery. Like a battery.
What's that?
Like a battery, right?
Exactly. Like a battery. Exactly. That it would decrease over time, that you had less willpower, but you would spend it up. Right. And as we do in the social sciences, when a study sounds a little bit too good to be true, we run it again. We replicate the study. And what other social scientists found was that when they attempted to replicate this study, they didn't find any evidence of ego depletion, that it didn't really exist. And there's been meta studies now, so studies of studies that have found it's probably not true. We don't run out of willpower. By the way, what does this look like? I used to do this all the time. I would come home from work and I would say, oh, that was a really hard day. I'm spent. I can't make any more good decisions. Give me that pint of Ben and Jerry's. I'm going to sit in front of the couch and watch Netflix, right? I'm out of willpower. And that's what that sounds like. And we tell ourselves that stuff all the time, but it's not true. Unless, here's the interesting part. One study found that actually some people do really experience ego depletion. They really do run out of gas in the gas tank, just the way they would run out of willpower in this case. Those people, and only those people, were people who believed that willpower was a limited resource. So if you believe that you run out of willpower, it actually became true. But if you didn't believe it, no such effect.
Wow. Because I had read that. I've read study after study after study. I read about the biology of your cingulate gyrus behind your left ear. That's the seat of your willpower, and the more decisions you make. And I think one of the studies showed judges in some country made better decisions in the morning, and people couldn't get paroled in the afternoon. And I'm like, how can this be true? How can this be true? That we're walking, breathing, building, making human beings, and we run out of willpower by lunch.
Well, so it turns out that willpower, the way we look at it is a little bit inaccurate according to this ego depletion idea. We don't run out of it. It's not a battery. It's not a gas tank. It's an emotion, just like any other emotion. So you're not having a good time at a party and you say, oh, this is so much fun. I'm so happy. Oops, I just ran out of it. No more happy. Or you get in an argument and you're angry at somebody, and then one day, and then in another minute you say, "Oh, I ran out of anger." No, that's not how emotions work. Emotions are like waves, right? And that's what turns out what willpower is. Willpower is an emotion. It's a sensation that crests and subsides at different times, but we don't run out of it. It's not limited. And in fact, we do have agency over it.
Wow, listen, if I had just ended the podcast now, I'd be blown away. All right, so
we're just getting started. This is the tip of the iceberg.
So you have this moment with your daughter. She was 12 at the time, and this kind of was a shift I always tell people SHIFT stands for see how I find truth. The see how I find truth moment with your daughter. I have twin 16-year-old daughters, so I've had a lot of these moments. Tell us about that moment that kind of puts you on this path to write such an amazing book.
Thank you. So this was shortly after I published my first book, Hooked. I had this afternoon with my daughter, just this beautiful, half a day plan, some quality daddy-daughter time. And I remember we had this book of activities that we could play, right? So there was different things that kind of helped dads and daughters bond together. And I remember there was in this book various activities like, do a Sudoku puzzle, make a paper airplane contest, things like that. And one of the activities in the book was to ask each other this question: if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want? And I remember that question verbatim, but I can't tell you what my daughter said, because in that moment, for whatever reason, I can't even remember, I started checking my phone. And before I knew it, when I looked up from my device, she was gone. And I realized that I had blown this perfect daddy-daughter moment. And so that's when I really had to reconsider my own relationship with distraction. Because if I'm honest with you, it didn't happen just with my daughter. It would happen when I would tell myself, oh, today I'm going to start exercising and eating right. And I didn't, and I wouldn't. Or I would get into work and I would say, okay, now I'm going to work on that big project that I've been procrastinating, that really important thing I have to do. I'm going to get started. And yet 20, 30, 40 minutes later, I was doing anything but that thing I said I was going to do. And so that's when I realized, wow, if I could have any superpower, I just want the power to do what I say I'm going to do, to follow through on what I know I should do. Because the problem today is no longer that we don't know what to do. It used to be information was scarce, right? People didn't have the secret knowledge to do the things that they wanted to do in life. But today, there's no secret knowledge. Who doesn't know that to get in shape, you have to eat right and exercise?
You're right.
Does anybody not know that? Do we really need to buy yet another diet book for some stupid fad to tell us essentially the same thing in every book? Right. Eat right and exercise. There's no magic. If you want to have good relationships with people, you have to be fully present with them. You have to invest the time and be there for them. Does anybody not know that? We know that. Does anybody not know that if we want to excel at our work, to do well in business, we have to do the work, especially the hard stuff that other people don't want to do? We know this. The question is no longer how do we find the information? The question is, how do we stop getting in our own way? That's the problem these days. I mean, if you don't know what to do, Google it. All the answers are there, right? It's all online. The problem today is that we don't know how to stop getting distracted.
Yeah. Crazy part is, like, everything you just said is dead on. What stops us? What causes us to get distracted then? Like, if everybody knows, it's not I was with a client a couple of weeks ago and I said, I don't know, there's maybe 100 people there, 80 people there, no, sorry. And I said, all right, Google, go on Amazon right now and how many books there are to lose weight. 287,000 books. How many on money management? 250,000. Why are we the most obese in debt nation? It's not a how-to problem. Right? The how-tos are easy. Why don't we do the things we need to do, right? So why is it? Because some people will tell you it's a motivation problem. People just aren't motivated. Some people tell you it's a biology problem. One lady swears, just beat your brain, count to 3 and then go. Like, everybody's got this. What is the problem? It's not a motivation problem. It's not a biology problem. What is it?
Yeah. Okay. So let's get down to the meat and potatoes here. Let's really try and understand this problem. First, by understanding that this is the most important skill of the century. Before you read another book, before you scroll another webpage looking for answers, let's understand that this is the macro skill. If we know what to do, but we're not doing it, we need to figure out why we keep getting in our own way. Why do we keep getting distracted? So let's start with, what does this word even mean, distraction? This is a term I thought I understood, but I really didn't. And I think most people don't understand it. The way to test if you really understand what is distraction is to understand what is the opposite of distraction. What's the antonym to the word? And most people will tell you, of course, the opposite of distraction is focus, right? Doesn't that make sense? Opposite of distraction is focus, but it's not. The opposite of distraction is not focus. If you look at the origin of the word, the opposite of distraction is traction. That both words come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice they're both spelled with the same 6-letter ending, A-C-T-I-O-N. That spells action. So these are things, not things that happen to us. Distraction is not something that happens to it. It is an action we take. So traction, by definition, is any action that pulls you, remember back to the Latin root, trahare, pulls you towards what you said you were going to do, things that you do with intent, actions that pull you towards living your values and becoming the kind of person you know you can become. The opposite of traction is distraction. Distraction is any action that pulls you further away from what you plan to do, further away from your values, further away from becoming the kind of person you know you can become. So this is super important. We have traction and we have distraction. Yeah. And any action can be either. Any action. Okay, let me give you an example. For years, I would sit down at my desk, first thing in the morning, I'd look at my to-do list and I'd say, oh, you know what? I've got that big project I really need to work on. I'm going to stop procrastinating. I'm going to do it first thing in the morning. Here I go. I'm going to get started. This is the most important thing. I have to do this today. But first, let me check some email, right? Let me do some of those other things on my to-do list that are kind of easy to cross off first, just to get some momentum, some motivation going, right? I got to do that stuff anyway. I have to check email at some point. That's a work-related task. And what I didn't realize, folks, this is the most dangerous, pernicious form of distraction, is the distraction that tricks you into prioritizing the easy and the urgent work at the expense of the important and hard work. So this is what I call pseudo work. And people do this all the time. I'm just cranking out some emails because it feels, I got to do that at some point. And they get off track from what they really said they need to do with their time. So any action, even the work stuff, can be a distraction if it's not what you plan to do with your time. Conversely, anything you do plan to do with your time with intent is traction. So don't listen to these chicken little tech critics that tell you, oh, social media is bad for you. These professors who tell you stop using social media, who have never even been on social media, who don't rely upon it for their jobs. Don't tell me not to use social media when you don't even have an account yourself. My job depends on it. I'll get fired if I stop using email. What kind of advice is that? So here's the thing, folks.
The same professor at one point would, grew up in a society where they said books were addicting.
That's right.
Imagine if their parents came and said, hey, listen, the book is the devil. Put the book down. They wouldn't be professors today.
Every generation has this. Every generation. People, when I was a kid, it was heavy metal music and Dungeons and Dragons. How that was addicting kids' brains. And before that, it was the radio. Before that, it was comic books. I mean, literally every technology, people say the same things, right?
My good friend Gary Vaynerchuk said, people are afraid of what they don't understand. So if you don't understand social media, then it's got to be the work of the devil. It's got to be horrible. It's got to be bad.
Exactly. And then, of course, the smart people, right? The majority of people just write this stuff off as silly and, addictive. Don't touch it. It's bad for you. But the ones who figure out how to use it, as opposed to being fearful of it, they get the best out of it without letting it get the best of them. And they do great, right? They succeed because they can see how to use these things for what they are, tools. They're just tools. So it's not about being anti-tech or pro-tech. That's a silly approach. This isn't black and white. It's nuanced. Anything you want to do with your time with intent is traction. So I have time in my day to use social media. I love social media. It's awesome. There are so many people I would not be able to connect with, but I use it on my schedule and according to my values, not the tech companies. Okay. So now we have two parts of this 4-part model. We have traction and we have distraction. Now, back to your question, what prompts us towards distraction? Why do we even get distracted during the first place, right? In the first place, if we know what to do, why don't we just do it? So here we have to talk about triggers. There are two types of triggers. We have what we call external triggers, which are all the things around us, the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that can lead us towards traction or oftentimes distraction. And this is what people tend to blame, right? Their phone buzzing and booping and beeping, all these things in our outside environment. But it turns out that is only 10% of the time that you check your phone, 10% of the time you get distracted is because of an external trigger, only 10%. Well, what's the other 90%? The other 90% of the time that we get distracted, 90% of the time we check our phones, it is not because of an external trigger. It is because of what we call an internal trigger. What's an internal trigger? An internal trigger is an uncomfortable emotional state that we seek to escape from. And this is to answer your question. You say, well, why do we get distracted? If we know what to do, why don't we just do it? Here's the thing. What I discovered in my 5 years of research, and what most people do not want to hear, is that distraction begins from within. That 90%, almost all the distraction in your life, it's not because of what is happening outside of you, it's what's happening in your own head. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, stress, anxiety. It is our inability to deal with discomfort that drives us towards distraction. And whether it's too much news, too much booze, too much football, too much Facebook, it doesn't matter. Whenever we go off track, it's always because, or almost always because, we don't know how to deal with these uncomfortable sensations in a healthy way. So this is probably one of the most important lessons of the book, okay? Time management necessitates pain management. Time management necessitates pain management. And it doesn't matter what life hacks, what tips and tricks and apps you might use. Fundamentally, if you don't know how to deal with discomfort in a healthy way, you're going to find distraction one way or another.
Yeah, love this. And I want to, so a couple of things. By the way, I have a whiteboard desk and it's already half full. So and I have the recording, but I'm writing it down as if I don't have the recording. So time management necessitates pain management. Tell me more. Like what does that mean? Tell me more.
Sure. So now we have the 4 steps of the Indistractable model, right? We start with mastering the internal triggers. Okay, that's step 1. We have to figure out how do we master these internal triggers so they don't become our master. We'll get back to that in a minute. Step 2 is making time for traction. Okay. Many people out there, they say how distracted they are. They don't seem to get what they want done. And a big part of it is because they haven't made the time for traction. They use this antiquated, terrible method of keeping a to-do list and running their life on that to-do list. And just to clarify, I'm not saying that writing things down is a bad thing. That's great. Get it out of your head, put it on a list. The problem is if you wake up in the morning and you look at your to-do list rather than your calendar, you've already lost. This has been shown to be a terrible time management technique that people keep using. And I'm telling you, it sucks. It's awful. And we can talk about why running your life on a to-do list is one of the worst things you can do for your personal productivity and what the alternative is. The third step is to hack back your external triggers. So we talk about how these companies are hacking our brains and they're making us do things. And I show you, hey, actually, you're way more powerful than you think you are. You can hack back, not just your technology. That's easy. I can show you how to do that in a few minutes. What about all the other distractions? Superfluous meetings. How many of us are sitting through terrible Zoom meetings or when we used to be in the office, time wasting, distracting meetings that we don't need to be in? How do we hack back those distractions? What happens if you're working from home and now it's your kids or your spouse or your roommate who are the distraction? What do we do then? I'll show you how to hack back those too. Your newsfeed, your email. Oh my God, how much time do we spend on email? That's useless and silly. I'll show you how to hack back email by up to 90% of the time you spend on email, we can reduce. That's hacking back the external triggers. And then the fourth and final step is to prevent distraction with pacts. Pacts are these pre-commitment devices that we can use as the firewall, as the last line of defense for a distraction to make sure we don't get off track. And when we use these 4 pillars together in concert, master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, and prevent distraction with pacts, this is how we become indistractable. And this is a compilation of decades of research. I didn't do all this research. This is academic research that's been around for a very, very long time. And I will tell you, it is a life-changing practice that I promise you, if you utilize these 4 fundamental strategies, whether you read my book or not, doesn't matter. I don't care. Implement these 4 strategies. Watch what happens. Your life will change in every area of your life. Your relationships will improve because you'll be fully present. Your physical and mental health will be better because you will do that exercise that you said you were going to do. You will take time for yourself as you said you would. Your work will improve because you will follow through and do what you say, even the stuff you don't really feel like doing. That's how we become indistractable.
Well, 2 things. One, if you're listening to this don't listen to him. Read the book first and then do it. So don't, like, he's being modest there. Read the book first, because I think the what's good. One of the many things that's good in the book is that there is very scientific, very real data that says this is true. This isn't just some guy sitting on a couch eating a bag of Fritos saying, "Hey, I'm going to tell you how not to be distracted." Right. So you have the scientific backing. So definitely read it. I want to go back to what you said, and this idea of the whole idea of hacking back, and these four. I know the pact is you do last, but the first one that I want to talk about. What was the first one? It is the
mastering internal triggers.
Master the internal.
That's the most
triggers.
important step.
Right. So nothing happens until you can figure out and master these internal triggers. Is that correct?
That's right. Right.
So can we talk about that just for a minute? Because I think that's the foundation. If you can't figure that out, it doesn't matter.
It's so true. And the techniques, there's no technique out there that will help you if you first don't address these internal triggers. You will always find distraction, right? Nothing else in my own book will work if you first don't tackle this. So let's talk about this more fundamental question. You brought up motivation earlier, and why some people think, oh, it's a lack of motivation that means that's why I don't do what I say I'm going to do. That's what people are missing. Well, let's talk about motivation for a minute. Most people don't understand what the scientific literature actually says about motivation. Most people have this concept of motivation that it's about carrots and sticks, right? We've all heard this. It's about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Jeremy Bentham talked about this. Sigmund Freud talked about this. He called it the pleasure principle. But we now know that neurologically speaking, in your brain, this is not what's happening. Neurologically, motivation is not about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. It's not about carrots and sticks. It's about just one thing. And here I'm going to have, you saw The Matrix, right?
Yep.
I remember that part of The Matrix where Neo looks at the spoon and he realizes there is no spoon.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to have a Matrix moment here, okay?
I'm ready.
The carrot is the stick. It's not about carrots and sticks. The carrot is the stick. What do I mean by that? Everything we do from a neurological basis, all human motivation comes from one thing and one thing only: the desire to escape discomfort. That's it. All human motivation. The definition of motivation is the energy for action to escape discomfort. Now, how can that be? It's all about pain? Well, in a way it is. Why? Because even the pursuit of pleasurable sensations, wanting, craving, desire, lusting, these things are psychologically destabilizing. The brain gets us to act, gets us to pursue something, even if we think we are pursuing it for the pleasure of feeling good. The way the brain gets us to do that is by making us feel discomfort. Okay. Everything we do is about the pursuit, it is about the desire to escape discomfort. This is called the homeostatic response. Think about it physiologically, okay? If you go outside and it's cold, the brain says, hey, it's cold, you should put on a jacket. The brain is spurring you to action to make you do something to regulate the body, okay? If you feel hungry, right? You get a little sensation of hunger, you feel hunger pangs, and the brain says you should eat something. So it spurs you to action for you to go get some food. Those are physiological responses to discomfort. The same holds true with our psychological discomfort. Let me give you some examples. When you feel lonely, check Facebook. When you're uncertain, Google, right? Before you even scan your brain to see if you know the answer, you're Googling it. When you feel bored, lots of solutions to boredom. We can look at the stock prices, sports scores. Let's check the news so we can worry about somebody's problems halfway across the world as opposed to having to look at our own problems. So everything you do is about a desire to escape discomfort, which means fundamentally that we can overcome these bad habits, these bad behaviors, when we start, first and foremost, by mastering the internal triggers. Again, time management necessitates pain management. So that's the launching off point to understand these techniques that none of them are my own techniques. I didn't invent them. They've been around for decades. what I do is surface them in this new application. So I give you examples from acceptance and commitment therapy, from CBT, from well-known studies that have been utilized to help you overcome these internal triggers. By the way, without meditation, I know, a lot of people, not that meditation is bad, but I know a lot of people think that like, oh, meditation is the answer to everything. Meditation is one tool. I actually don't talk about it in the book because I feel like it's been covered to death. And I tried it for quite a while. I meditated every day for a whole year, and I got really good at meditating, but it didn't actually like solve other problems in my life. So I really want a very action-oriented book that gives you specific techniques that you can use to master those internal triggers.
I love this. And this whole conversation, I think, is really important. I'm on board 100% with the escape discomfort. The idea of when we talk about motivation, we talk about the intrinsic, extrinsic, when we talk about these triggers, is the idea of motivation and this escape and discomfort. James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits. I think Daniel Pink talks about it a little bit in his book Drive. But intrinsic motivation, he said the greatest form of intrinsic motivation is pride in oneself, is the idea, and pride in one's behavior. So is the idea of if I take action that I say I was going to take or do, it makes me feel proud, which then escapes me from pain. Does that make sense? That question makes sense. So like, how do we get into this comfort level? So we're feeling bored, we're feeling lonely, we're feeling sad. We take action that we say we're going to take, right? Whatever is on my calendar, I take the action. That has to create an emotional response, correct?
Right. So what we want to do is essentially reimagine how we approach the internal triggers. And we can do that in a few different ways. We can reimagine the trigger itself. We can reimagine the task, and we can reimagine our temperament. So these are the three ways that we master our internal triggers, starting with reimagining the trigger itself. A big problem is that many people, when they experience these uncomfortable sensations, their impulse is to think that's bad, that feeling this discomfort is a sign that they are somehow not who they think they are, that they're somehow like, this is a bad sign, because the self-help industry feeds us this BS that feeling bad is bad. That's not true, okay? That what we are taught from the self-help industry is that we're supposed to be happy all the time, that we're supposed to be contented, that if somehow you're discontented, that somehow you're broken and damaged and you need to be fixed. Silly, ridiculous. Let's think about it logically for a minute.
Crazy.
If there was ever a tribe of people who were happy all the time, who were contented, what would have happened 50,000 years ago? I'll tell you what would have happened. Our ancestors would have met them, killed them, and eaten them. Right? Because you don't want a species to be contented. You want, from an evolutionary basis, you want the human race to constantly want more. It's that disquietude, it's that emotional discomfort that gave us the motivation to invent, to create, to improve our lot in life. So feeling bad is not bad. It's a signal. The problem is, the reason this is so harmful, the reason the self-help industry is really getting people to shoot themselves in the foot is because as soon as we feel bad, oh my God, I have to stop feeling stressed. I have to stop feeling anxious. I have to stop feeling whatever it is. Give me a pill, give me a shot, give me something to scroll so I can escape through distraction, as opposed to using it as rocket fuel towards traction. So that's a big mind shift, right? We have to start changing how we look at these internal triggers and realize, wait a minute, this is a good thing, right? When I feel bored, when I feel anxious, when I feel stressed, that's not bad. That's a signal. That tells me something. How can I harness it to move me forward as opposed to trying to escape it? So that's a big part.
It's a go signal. It's a green light. So you feel it, you're like, all right, I'm on the precipice here. Go.
And you look at the greats in every industry, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's the arts, they use that discomfort, right? You look at the backstories of some of the world's most creative, ambitious, productive people. There's a lot of pain in their lives. But the way they use that discomfort is everything. They don't escape it with drugs and booze or scrolling. They use it to drive them forward. Okay. That's utilizing it as rocket fuel, utilizing these internal triggers as rocket fuel towards traction rather than distraction. Reimagine the internal triggers. Then we have to reimagine the task. Turns out that we can actually see the work we need to do differently. There's some very interesting techniques that we can use being pulled straight out of gaming and different things that we find to be very enjoyable that we can actually utilize to make all kinds of tasks something that aren't so burdensome. And so I show you how to reimagine the task. And then finally, reimagining our temperament, which goes back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier of disposing of this self-image that we are somehow, deficient, that we are addicted, that we have, a personality type. We talked about a little bit earlier with ego depletion and how we can have a new identity, a new temperament that we use for ourselves. So for example, that's why the book is titled Indistractable. This is the superpower. Indistractable sounds like indestructible. I wanted it to sound like an attribute, a trait, a moniker that we can use to identify ourselves as this new identity, this new temperament that we have. So those are the three big ways that we reimagine our triggers, the task, and the temperament to master the internal triggers.
Because imagine if I saw myself as indistractable and that became my new truth, how productive I would be, I'd be fit, I'd be happy, I'd be successful, because what pulls us away from all those things is the distraction and this some emotion that we're trying to avoid.
That's right. And just to be clear, being indistractable, it's a made up word. I coined the term, and so I can define it any way I want.
That's
and
right.
So to be clear, it doesn't mean you never get distracted. Okay, I still get distracted from time to time, but here's the difference. An indistractable person recognizes why they got distracted and they can do something about it.
Yeah.
So Paulo Coelho had a wonderful quote. He said, "A mistake repeated more than once is a decision. A mistake repeated more than once is a decision." Distractible people choose to be distracted. How do I know that? How long are we going to complain about Facebook distracting us? How long are we going to complain that our kids are keeping us from writing that novel? How long are we going to complain that we can't do our work because of our boss or because of the news or because of Twitter? Okay, enough. Once it happens, it's their fault. Twice, it's your fault. Yeah. So a distractible person keeps getting distracted by the same stuff again and again. They become helpless. An indistractable person says, okay, you got me once. I got distracted the first time. What am I going to do about the next time? Well, there's only 3 reasons for every possible distraction. Either it's an internal trigger, an external trigger, or a planning problem. That's it. There are only 3 potential sources of every distraction. So an indistractable person says, okay, next time you're not going to get me. I'm going to take steps today to prevent getting distracted again in the future.
Yes. And I think this is big just because it lays to rest this idea of that I don't have control over my life. You know what I mean? Because I'm saying it's quite liberating when you start. It's scary, but it's liberating at the same point, right? So you're telling me that if it's not Mark Zuckerberg's fault that book's not written, and it's not Jeff Bezos' fault that the book's not written, and it's not Time Warner's fault. Oh, wait a minute. Then you're saying it might be my fault.
Damn it.
But which is liberating, because once you're consciously and confident, you're aware, then you're like, oh, well, now I can do something about it.
Exactly. And by the way, I'm not prescribing any specific actions. I'm not saying you need to exercise 7 days a week. I'm not saying you need to read 100 books a year. I'm not saying any action in particular that you need to do. If you want to spend your day playing video games, I am totally cool with that.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Here's what I want to do. I want to help you do whatever it is you want to do with your time. I don't want you to look back at your life in 40 years and say, I should have spent my time differently when I had the chance. I want you to live the life you deserve by helping you do whatever it is you say you want to do with your time, because most people do not. Most people say they want to do one thing and they don't follow through. They don't do what they say they're going to do. They lie to themselves, which kills me because it was so true for me in my case. honesty is a very important attribute, right? Most people out there, they are generally honest. They wouldn't lie to their kids. They wouldn't lie to their friends. They wouldn't lie to their spouse, their family. They know how important it is to be an honest person. And yet when it comes to ourselves, we lie all day, every day. We say we're going to eat right. We say we're going to work out. We don't. We say we're going to work on that big project. Not so much. And so living with personal integrity, that's what becoming Indistractable is all about. It's simply following through, being as honest with yourself as you are with others. And let me tell you, when you become Indistractable, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders. It feels incredible to get to the end of your day and say, whoa, I did exactly what I said I'm going to do today. I lived exactly the kind of life I said I would because I chose how I was going to spend my time and attention.
Listen, I read a lot. I'm an avid reader. I probably have, I don't even know how many books I have sitting right here on my desk that I'm going to read the next month. And I will tell you, this is a must read, right? It's even now, I read it already. But now that I talk to you, I'm like, shit, I got to go back and read this again. I got to read all my I got to make sense of all my notes on my whiteboard. But I think I'll go back to what I said. It's liberating. It's liberating to know that if that I have control over my life. And to your point, you want to play video games? Great. Play video games, but live life on your terms, not on the circumstances terms or what people have made you believe is the truth, right? I had a great guest, Dr. Caroline Leaf on the show. Amazing neuroscientist. And she said, the biggest challenge is in society now is that we are programming kids to not feel the emotions they should be feeling. And we're labeling them, which now they're adopting as their truth at an early age. You have ADD, oh, I'm broken. You have bipolar, now you're broken. You have this, now you're broken. You have this, and that becomes their life story, as opposed to, listen, you have the ability to be indistractable.
Right.
You have the ability to control your life circumstance. Don't fall into the prey of, you're just a puppet to the circumstance around you.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, phenomenal. All right, so two final questions. One, where do people find you, connect with you, become a fan?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So my book is called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. It's available wherever books are sold. And my website is nirandfar.com, but Nir is spelled like my first name. So it's NIR and far.com. And if you go to nirandfar.com, there's actually an 80-page workbook that we couldn't fit into the final edition of the book itself. So you can actually get that. It's completely complimentary. You can get that at nirandfar.com. And it was really terrific being here with you. You said you had one final question for me?
Yeah, but first, you also have an amazing podcast.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
You also have a great podcast. So make sure you download his podcast, subscribe to his podcast. The guy is everywhere. Super, super, super smart. And what's nice, what is fantastic is, and I'm sure you've heard this, but you're super relatable. So everything in the book, sometimes you read some of these books and they'll go right over your head. You're trying to grasp the concept that they're speaking on a language that you don't understand. And somehow you were able to take this very specific scientific information and make it very digestible for anybody to read. So
I appreciate that.
And there's a great I don't want to call it a trick, but a hack, which I think most people are going to need in the next couple of weeks as they go back to work. And that is I'm indistractable. What does it say? It's
the screen sign.
Yeah, the screen sign, right?
Yeah. So every copy of the book to tell everybody. So every copy of the book comes with a screen sign. This is one of the techniques to hack back external triggers in the office, right? Yeah. So every copy of the book comes with this cardstock thing that you pull out of the book, you put it on your computer monitor, and it tells your colleagues, "Hey, I'm indistractable right now."
I'm indistractable. A lot of people are going to start going back to work soon, and I think what's going to happen is you're going to see productivity start to drop. because people are going to be around each other again. Like, oh, I haven't seen a human being in forever. Just come on in, sit down, have a seat, let's chat, right? 6 feet away, mind you, but they're going to be so cool little hack there. All right. My last question for you. So you said you were 43 years old. So I'm going to go with 60 years from now, 65 years from now, when you leave this earth, what do you want your contribution to have been?
Wow, that's a great question. So I would like my contribution to be, I'll go back to what I think is my life purpose. So I remind myself of my life purpose. I have these mantras that I review every day. And I think my life purpose is to explain the world so it can be made better. That's my purpose, to explain the world so that it can be made better. And so that's why the research I do, the everything I write about is all in service of there's this truth out there, but it's too murky. I don't really understand it. How can I apply it to my life? And look, it's really, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty selfish. I'm doing this for me, right? Like I needed to become indistractable, but I read every book on the topic and it didn't fix my problem, right? It was all very superficial. So I wanted to fix it for myself. And the fact that it benefits other people as well, that's awesome. But really, it's research is me search. And so I want to explain the world so it can be made better.
Research is me search. It is. It is. Listen, I appreciate you. Buy the book today. Don't listen to them. Don't just like take this information and not read the book. Get the book, buy the book, gift the book, and get hooked while you're at it. Read both of them. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow him on all the social medias. He's only going to be active when his calendar says he can be active though. So don't be crazy, right? All right. So appreciate you. And until next time, be safe.